All right. Welcome back, everybody, and welcome those who are new. I'm Nick, and I'm here with my good friend Spencer, and this is the Well-Crafted Man. Today, we are talking about something that I feel deeply about: anger and aggression, and how all of us deal with that, and how those of us specifically with masculine energy, as Spencer and I are both men, move throughout our life with anger and aggression.
Yeah, I
So,
think it's a big one with men in general. When you see anger with women and folks who are non-binary, it's horrible and it really hurts. But then with men, there's the potential of or a higher potential for physical harm and like life-ruining stuff. So I think it's important to talk about. First thing we got to do is to define it, because anger, in my opinion, is not necessarily a bad thing. It's an emotion. It just simply is. Um, the way I was taught was that uh, it's helpful to think of anger as a symptom, and the primary cause of anger is boundary violation. Um, so when someone it triggers you and pushes your buttons a little bit too hard, your first step is like say no, or your first step is to try and manipulate them out of it. But then once those fail, you go to anger, and anger is you putting up that wall, that very firm wall. That's like I'm ready to go to war for this because you've attacked me. Um, so that's kind of how I look at anger. I don't know if that rings true for you at all or anything.
yeah, I would say yes to that. And then to go a pinch deeper, uh, when you said define anger, that's a tricky one for me anyway. To me, like for a long time, it was just standard operation. It's just how you woke up, and it was in recent times. Anger to me has been all of those things that you said, but also more of like a secondary emotion,
Yeah.
a sign of other things
Yeah.
that are happening. Not
100%.
necessarily that I am angry. It's just anger was the way that I expressed something else.
Was present. Yeah. That's something that happens to a lot of men um, as our uh, as our lives kind of become mangled by the world and what we experience. All of our emotions kind of go. I have a picture in my head of like a funnel, like an oil funnel, and like so all these emotions start out separate, and it's like sadness or disappointment or shame, and then they get compressed into this filter, and then they come out just as anger, um, because that energy has to go somewhere. It doesn't just become stagnant. So the way that we filter that is into our anger and into our aggression, um, which is very sad. Um, because if we can work with our emotions individually and work with them how they're supposed to be, then things are much clearer. But as men, we run into that problem a lot.
It's tricky to isolate those thoughts and understand that
Yeah.
that it is a sad thing because for me anyway, that I couldn't get there without some help, some coaching,
Yep.
and
100%.
and unfortunately, the way I felt and the way many other people I talk to feel about this sort of thing is when you are feeling these sorts of things, we go into like isolation,
Mm.
and or at least like for
Sometimes.
me, for sure, I'll shell up, and because that's not something that other people should be privy to. So don't express that, and that only exacerbates the issue, um, because I'm not learning how to manage those sorts of things.
Yeah.
It's because it's not apparent, you
Yeah.
know.
Very few of us do. Something that for the four people that are going to hear this, this is pretty mind blowing. We, when you're angry, or when you're happy, or when you're sad, or whatever, good or bad, um, we want the people in our immediate vicinity to feel the same way that we do. So when you're upset and you get grumpy and you're like, and then people are like, hey, are you okay? And you're like, no. Or you're like, yeah, I'm fine, whatever. That's you subconsciously trying to get them to feel the same way that you feel. So when we're happy and our friend's in a bad mood and we're like trying to cheer them up, that's because we want people to feel the same way that we feel. So when we're angry and when we're upset, then our actions are going to try and create anger in those around us, which is kind of terrifying when you think about it, because it's like a wave. It just keeps going and keeps going. And when you're angry, you feel completely justified in it. Right. This person made me so angry that I'm just gonna, scream and yell and shout. But they don't see that justification. Other people don't. So they just see you screaming and yelling. And then suddenly you've got two people who are very, very angry at each other and judging each other based on their actions. And it just keeps escalating. This is going back to our conversation about the limbic brain in episode 2, which you should check out, folks.
All 4 of you.
All 4 of you, yeah. Thrift books, give us money. And I think it's true for me because I do that all the time. Like the way I react to anger is I kind of withdraw. So if somebody makes me mad, I'm just kind of like, wanna.
I get that. I mean, I'll do a little bit the opposite. If somebody makes me mad, I tend to give it back.
Yep, which is considered historically like a very masculine trait.
It's pretty destructive depending on the situation.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
which is also very masculine.
Yeah, that kind of maneuvers into aggression here, and my anger will express itself through overt aggression towards other people, and I know other people who do the same thing, who do things like that as well. Yeah, I mean, the anger and the aggression go hand in hand. However, not everybody who's angry is aggressive.
Yeah,
it's an interesting.
It's more of a trait, and anger is is an emotion. I think that's an important distinction.
Yeah. What is a specific instance in where you were angry or aggressive?
I remember I was on a vacation with my family, and the way that we had like rented this cabin, and the way it worked out is that I had to sleep on a couch in the living room. And so we put sheets on it and a pillow and everything, and it was fine. So the day goes by, and my brother and his wife, who are not great with boundaries, decided that they wanted to use the couch. And so first they sat down on the sheets, and I was like, guys, I'm not okay with this. Like, I don't want like all the dirt and junk and like your butts on my sheets. Like I sleep there. And they said, oh, sorry. And then they lifted they just kind of threw the sheets back. And I was like, okay, well, and I was annoyed. And I was getting to anger. And I was like, there's a whole nother couch over here. Can you just use that? And then this can be my space. And then you don't have to worry about it. And then I don't have to worry about it. And it just feels a little bit more respectful. And they didn't want to do it. They're like, oh, we want to spread out and we want to lay down and all this. And I was like, there's got to be a middle ground here because I feel like you're trying to, kind of like overpower me. And the fact that they didn't let it go really made me angry, And I think that was a time when I had an actual, like a rift with my brother that we never fully healed because I got really mad. Just the fact that I was like trying to come to a middle ground and they just kept pushing and they kept trying to take. And it still bothers me to this day thinking about it. At one point, my sister-in-law just sat down on my pillow, not out of like at least conscious aggression, but she was just like, oh, this will be nice to have, and then just sat down in it and nothing I said mattered. And just sets me off just thinking about it now. So that's the example that I think of when.
Good for you. I mean, like That story sounds like you took all the proper avenues. You didn't just go straight to just get the F off my couch.
Yeah.
Break someone's neck if that happens.
I've never been, I'm not super aggressive. I'm a pretty good therapist because I'm very gentle. I'm sure you've picked that up, but.
Very gentle. That's adorable.
Yeah.
So I wanted to tell you a story about aggression just a couple days ago. I was at work and almost traded blows with some alleged NBA player at work. So this dude, you have to tell everybody to put their masks on all the time. That's just part of life now.
Yeah.
And that's annoying because you get 1 out of 10 who is also angry and aggressive about something, and you don't tell them to put their mask on. This was one of those times. Walk in with my boss. My boss points over at the guy and says, "Hey, go over there and tell him to put his mask on." And I'd seen this dude in the casino earlier, and I was like, "Oh boy." So I go over there, ask him, "Hey man, can you put your mask on for me, please? Thank you." And he just like everything stopped for him. And he just like begrudgingly pulled it up like that. And I walked away, and but like I could feel it, feel the buzzing. And I turn around, and this dude is just like demon eyeing me real hard, and I hate that.
Yeah.
Don't ever look at me cross-eyed. And so I go back, and
what made you go back?
Ask him, what the hell you looking at? So do you have a problem?
At that point you were.
That instantly got me there.
Yeah.
I was like, let's do it. I've been in, I don't know, a bunch of fights, dozens of fights, and a good portion of them started out like that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, they always do.
Just looking at me wrong. So I go right up to him, and this dude's big. Like, I'm 6'1", and I'm looking up at this guy. Like, he's a big dude. And so the whole altercation ensues. His friends try to encourage him to not, because I'm not backing down. And like other employees like run away and shit. Everybody leaves me behind. And he eventually backs down, and we go our separate ways. And then I start to reflect on it, and I'm like, man, I'd like, first off, if this happened, like if we start going at it, primarily the first thing is it would have been an epic fight, because I would have definitely been damaged. He would have been damaged. It would have been a mess. Number one. Number two, I would have lost my job. I'd have a lot more to lose than him. This dude's an alleged NBA player. He's talking about his jeweler and his Ferrari. What do you drive, bro? Drive a Hyundai. I can name 5 reasons why it's better than your fucking Ferrari. And so I have a lot more to lose. And every single time something like this happens, I reflect on it, on all the reasons why I shouldn't have done it. And how I should have done better. And I'm lucky that I have not had to deal with too many consequences from this sort of behavior that I exhibit. Like, I have a friend, or used to be a friend, an acquaintance from high school. Mr. Anderson is what we'll call him. Anderson was one of his names. This dude, one of the toughest dudes I ever knew in my life. And he was part of our little crew of people who aggressively fought other people all the time. And he got into a fight with a dude who was like 6'6", kind of like the dude I interacted with. And he ended up getting his face annihilated.
Yeah.
Had to have surgery. And this is a testament to that dude's toughness. The fight happened. The big guy punched him and knocked him out immediately. So he was down on the ground. And then he proceeded to crush his face with his fist while he was defenseless. He had to have facial reconstructive surgery.
Yeah.
And have it all put back together. But he didn't tell his parents how it happened and anything like that, and nobody really knew the extent of the damage. He finished out the rest of the week of school like that. It's big, black and blue and whatever. He had nothing to say about it other than I got in a fight and I lost. Never showed anything else other than that. Ended up having whole face surgery. It was incredible. One of the toughest dudes I ever met. Ended up getting kicked out of the military eventually.
That's hard to do. They really want you to stay.
He
So
got in trouble too many times.
I want to go
Crashed a car into a lake and then walked back to base.
I want to go back to your story about almost fighting with NBA guy.
Yeah.
What I find interesting and what I find to be connection is what you said earlier, where you think of it as a symptom, or I think of it as a symptom or a secondary emotion. And I think it's helpful to kind of look at, well, it's actually been proven, there's been research around it, that most of our interactions with people have very little to do with the actual interaction. That most everything that we see in other people is actually coming from us. Some say it's as much as 80% of when you meet a new person, which is why sometimes you meet someone new. Actually, this one, do you want me to ruin romance for you?
Yes.
Okay. When you meet someone, a potential partner, and like romantic, and you're like, I feel like I know this person. I've known this person my entire life. Like, I love at first sight. I love them so much. It's because they share qualities with your parents or your caregivers when you were a kid. And even though you don't know it, you're attracted to those qualities. So if you had an abusive parent, you're attracted to people who are abusive generally. Or if you have parents who are kind or funny, then you're attracted to that. Or even just something simple like wearing glasses or having like a tic. But that's true with everything. As much as 80%. Don't quote me on this. I think it was a researcher named Brene Brown. She's pretty famous, but I think she said that. So what I picked up in your NBA story is that you told him what to do, and that set him off. And then he squared up with you, which set you off. Or he gave you the stink eye. So both of those experiences happened from things that neither of you had resolved in your past that make you angry. Because anger is a secondary emotion. Anger is a symptom. So he probably had someone when he was a kid or when he was developing that was like very domineering against him, that was telling him what to do all the time, and he hated it. And so when you told him what to do, he wasn't seeing you, he was seeing that person who spent their entire lives telling him what to do. And when he squared up with you, you weren't seeing him, you were seeing whoever you've been dealing with. Whether it's one of your many fights that you got into.
Any adversary ever.
Any adversaries, and it can probably be traced back to one or two when you were young. So that's anger in a nutshell.
Some bonker stuff. So how do we as men, first off, identify what is causing our anger, since it is secondary? How do we go within ourselves to identify where that anger is coming from? And then how do we, after that, move through the rest of our lives being better, more well-crafted men?
Well said. Part of the trouble that we run into is that the sources for our emotions can be very complicated. It could be a trauma response. It could be parenting issues. It could be just trying to prove to yourself and to the world that you have value. Like your friend who got into a fist fight in high school and was like putting up the front. It could be any reason. Like it could be trying to get accepted by your friends. So the problem is that everyone's different and everyone's needs individual attention. So if someone's dealing with anger issues, my first advice is just get into counseling and see somebody. I push this on everybody, even people who are like put together as far as humans are. Just do it. Like it'll change your life 100%. But then after that, I would say that having good awareness around it is important. and then having good techniques queued up to help you get through it in the future. So breathing exercises, counting to 10, interventions like that, they seem cliche and stupid and silly, but you got to do something. You got to.
Yeah, I agree. In preparation for this episode, did some readings, and the guy I was mentioning earlier, that Marvin Westwood,
Okay.
he spoke about Marvin Westwood is, for those of you who don't know, which nobody knows because he's just some guy in Canada. He's a professor, leading professor of psychology at the University of Alberta. Anyway, he talks a lot about men's issues in the form of anger and depression and things like that. And what he would urge all of us to do as men is to break out of that isolationist sort of mentality that I certainly do. I resonate with that because his studies, and then also just you can extrapolate that information and look at the history of humankind. Men do better in groups, or people in general do better in groups.
Yeah.
You know, we're social creatures. But as a masculine person, being as in a part of a men's group, you know, team sports, you're in a group of men, you know, those sorts of things are healthy for you and can definitely help you reflect on yourself and understand where those emotions are coming from as well.
Well said. Men's groups are great. There's a lot of free ones. Yeah, you reminded me of like outlets for like stress management and depression and things. I think it's all tied together. I mean, it is. We know it is. So like going for walks, working out, running, eating right. It's all connected, and it's just maintenance of our brains. There's so much more connected to our bodies than we previously realized. It's like they go hand in hand all the time.
You're feeling yourself, and the more you feel yourself and how your body feels when your brain says emotion, that's practice for when your brain says emotion equal anger. How do you feel here? How do we adjust that?
Yeah.
And for me, as a Stoic, the main principle of nothing precedes the mind. If nothing precedes the mind, and then, you know, you have an emotion, how you feel about something is being brought on the mind, you just need to reframe how you think about that. And reframing how you think about it will change how your entire body feels.
Yeah.
You'll completely change your emotion. Anger and aggression can come from, you know, depression in men that's led on from the feelings of inadequacy, failure, hurt, things like that. And I can resonate with that. And if I'm not on top of my stuff every day, because I hold high standards for myself, probably too high because I never meet them, I will feel those things: failure, regret, shame, because I didn't achieve what I said I would in that day. So it's important to first off be kind to yourself, and second, if you're going to be stoic, reframe that situation. Change in your mind that failure into a, you know, not complete success or whatever. You have the ability to make your own judgments and opinions on what is set forth in front of you, and ultimately reshape the landscape that is laid out.
Well said. There's a very famous coach, and I don't know if she's a therapist or not, but this woman named Byron Katie. She does a lot of couples stuff, and so she does this exercise where you write out what's bothering you. So it's like, I hate my coworker. He's so mean to me. He's so needy. He's so blah 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 blah. And you do this whole exercise, this whole long thing about all the things that you hate in the other person, and then she has you go back through it and replace him and the other person or her with yourself. And then it's suddenly like the introspection is incredible, going back to what I said earlier, where most of it comes from within. So like, it's like, I hate how needy I am. I hate how how much I need other people's attention. I hate how much, and then suddenly you're realizing like I am carrying all this shame and all this like self-loathing that I just push into other people, and that's where the work begins. That's where it starts, um, which is incredibly powerful. So
That is cool. I may try that.
it's amazing. But you got to do it with a counselor that knows what they're doing, because once you open up that wound, you got to know how to close it. And people don't know how. So then you're just walking around with this like existential pain, and so you have to know. Go. That's why I tell everybody go to a counselor, see a counselor.
That's my drive to work almost every day. Just spiraling, and then I walk in with blood spraying out of me, and then I just put it on everybody else. Hey man, what do you think about this? Let's talk about this. And people try walking away from me. Like, there's no one to talk to.
Yeah, because remember what I said, what you're feeling on the inside, you want other people to feel the same way that you do. So if you're going into work angry, you want the people around you to be angry, but they don't want to be angry, so they're going to walk away.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want them to be angry, but it's fun to jump down the rabbit hole and have a deeper understanding of these little, existential things, right? Broke my chair.
But to fall backwards down the rabbit hole. I remember one time when I was at work, this is probably 2 or 3 years ago, and it was retail, essentially. And I was super mad, and I was telling myself stories to keep myself mad.
Yeah.
On purpose. And it like felt really good. So for some reason, like letting that anger out feels good, even in the moment.
That's the catch, man.
Definable. But you know what I'm talking about? Where you're like,
yeah, anger feels amazing, especially when you can act it out. Like getting your hands on someone, or like for me anyway. Yeah, just that's the ultimate release of it. Is to really just feel it and then physically let it out on something or someone.
Do you think that the best feeling part is in the release of the pressure, or do you think the act of doing it feels really good?
Both. Definitely both. Like the pressure will definitely release as you let it out. And I mean, obviously I'm not attacking everyone that I come into contact with. But I do have, like the NBA incident. He's not NBA. He's alleged. Okay. Alleged. Maybe he plays for the European League or whatever. Anyway.
Do you remember our mutual friend, I don't want to say his name, who's just like angry at everything?
Yeah, absolutely. And it talking about that guy was obviously not angry at anything that was in front of him. Just everything that was in front of him was going to feel that wrath.
Yeah, it was coming from within. He's clearly just drowning in trauma, like
absolutely,
which is very heartbreaking. But
yeah, and you can't do anything about it.
Anger just comes out all the time at everything, and I'm wondering that probably doesn't feel very good.
That way it doesn't. No, because I think anger is best released physically. Have angry sex, or like for me, I just overtrain at the gym to the point where I feel pain. It has to be physically released because it's so pent up. It builds tension within you. When you can feel where it's coming from, you get tight and you just gotta really just explode out.
It does a lot of damage to you physically. It really does.
Oh yeah,
and tumors and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, the physiological detriments of excessive cortisol and just chronic anger and the hormone that's released with that stiffen your arteries, shrink your brain, literally. And it's insane. It's very important to address what it is that is making you express anger, and to hold down your aggression so that you don't do anything detrimental. And being that aggression is more of like a trait, and then anger is an emotion. How do you not exacerbate that trait with anger? You need to address the anger, and addressing that anger through the different methods we spoke about: group therapy or men's groups things, actual therapy, going for a walk, even being kind to yourself, do something nice for yourself. I don't do that ever.
Yeah.
That's something that's hard to, get into.
Anger is
All
not
of those things.
necessarily bad.
No, I mean, a lot of times it's justified.
What causes anger is bad. Anger is an emotion. It's a piece of us. But what causes perpetual anger, like trauma or whatever, that's the bad part. So managing those symptoms and then getting to the core of the issue, I think, is the key.
You help yourself out physiologically. You help yourself out in society because you're not going to alienate people who don't want to be around that all the time.
I mean, think about someone who had like an abusive parent, and then the first day at work, their boss turns out to be very aggressive and abusive towards them. They're going to get fired immediately, or at the very least, they're going to hold a grudge and then completely alienate and be considered the toxic person, even though they think they're fully justified.
Yeah, there's a myriad of reasons why this is good to handle and good to talk about.
Yeah. Talking about it is the first step. It's not the only step, but it's the first and the best step.
Yeah. And not just thinking about it. I've learned this a lot. I think a lot. Things don't ever really become real until they are spoken outward, especially in the anger realm. As we just said, anger's best released physically. Physically say it is what you are thinking, and that'll help you get there faster.
Yeah.
Say it out loud. That's important.
Yeah. Manage it. It's tough, but it's doable. I don't get angry very often. I used to when I was younger.
I'm getting less and less of it.
I mostly went the depressive route, but when I was younger and like when I was in the service, it was like I was angry all the time because it was a toxic environment. So of course I was. But since I went to school for psychology and since I started going to therapy and working on myself, I rarely get angry anymore because I've worked through a lot of my issues around anger.
For me, it's been therapy as well, and just acknowledging that it's there.
Yeah.
Where does it come from? Notice when it starts to come up, because I have a tendency to repress everything. Then not just anger, everything. Sadness will stay down and then just boil up. And also, I can't control when that happens. It'll just happen. Yeah. Like a mantle plume in the earth. It's just, here it is. You got to deal with that, whatever emotion that is. So therapy has been tremendous in acknowledging that and making me less of an angry person.
Yeah.
Recognizing before the explosion happens and I lose my mind in the grocery store,
Or if you're talking to your boss and they trigger you, like you just lost your job.
Yeah. Jeez. Oh, dude, I am so lucky to still be where I am for the bouts I've had with my managers in a very short amount of time.
Really?
Yeah. Some of them really need to know how to talk to people, or at least know how to talk to me. You don't talk to me like that.
Dude, what was that George Carlin joke? Hell is other drivers.
Hell has other drivers.
All the time. Hell is other drivers, or just like hell is other people,
Yeah, dude. I driving home last night. It was all slippery and snowy. I'm like, man, this would be a lot better if no one else was here.
Yeah.
I'd get home and I'd feel totally safe.
I remember I was driving my mom to the airport when I was like probably 17 or 16, and 4-lane highway, and it was like really bad downpour, really bad. But there was nobody else on the road. So we were in the left lane making a very gradual left turn, and we hydroplaned from the left lane all the way to the right lane in the space of this turn. But nobody was there, and I was a kid, so I was like, this is so fun. I am having a blast. And then I look over at my mom, and she is terrified. And I'm like, oh, maybe I should slow down a little bit.
Sliding's fun. As long as there's nothing in the way to hit,
Yeah.
My car won't let me do it now, though. I try. I'll go real hard on the ice and stuff like that. It has to be really icy.
Now. I used to pull the e-brake
Bummer.
and spin around in circles in parking lots. It was so fun.
I saw a dude doing that earlier today. I was so jelly. He's like, man, nothing happened.
He's young. Yeah. Well, cool. I think we got it.
I think we got it. Thank you, everybody, for listening. This was Anger and Aggression with the Well-Crafted Man. I hope we helped someone, and I know I feel better. So, let's catch us anywhere there are podcasts available. We're on all the platforms, and or watch us on YouTube.
We're setting up a TikTok eventually. I'm holding off as long as possible. Instagram. Do we have a handle yet?
No, I'm not familiar. So Instagram, sure. We'll have to figure that out. But yeah, So then Instagram, YouTube, all the podcast outlets. Find us, listen, help yourselves. Be well-crafted men.
Well said. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Hey, one more thing before we go. I decided to put on my thinking cap, and I think it's important to note that the things that we talk about in this podcast and videos, it's not intended to diagnose or treat any mental disorders or mental angst that you're going through. And it's really important to reach out to professionals when you feel like you are in an unsafe space or when you feel like you're kind of stuck in a rut. There's no shame in getting help. There's a lot of counselors out there that will do sliding scale payments. So you don't have to pay their full rate, and they'll be able to work with you if you can't afford their full rate. Or there's the National Crisis Hotline, which I have here. It's 800-273-8255. It's 800-273-8255, and give them a call, and they can work with you if you're going through crisis. There's people that are trained to help. They're really good. And if it's an emergency, if you're not feeling safe, then you need to get help. Call 911. Get somebody there that can help you. For real, there's no shame in reaching out for help. It's really important. So thanks for listening. Take care, everybody. Talk to you later.